Greetings, friends, family, and most importantly, gaming enthusiasts, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we delve into the intricate world of God of War Ragnarök, Valhalla. And this isn't just your run-of-the-mill DLC, it's one of the few DLCs that I've played in the years that I actually consider crucial to play if you are a fan of the series. I myself have probably been a devoted fan since the 2018 installment and have clocked in around most likely 300 combined hours already on both God of War 2018 and Ragnarök. This DLC is an absolute love letter to the fans and what I would consider a masterclass in taking a story that's already concluded and further extending it beyond its life, but in a meaningful way. Join me today as we explore this finely crafted extension to the story known as the God of War. So, before we dive into the review, I want to give a fair warning here. We're about to embark on a journey filled with spoilers. And if you haven't experienced Valhalla yet, now's the perfect time to exit this video and return after you've had the pleasure of playing, which is something I highly recommend. For those who are like me that are undeterred by spoilers, then let us proceed. Let's kick things off with the core of any gaming experience, the gameplay. Valhalla released on December 12, 2023, and it introduces elements of the rogue-like genre, which is distinct from rogue-like games. And if you're anything like me, then you probably had no idea what these terms meant until this video. But don't worry, brothers and sisters, all shall become clear soon. And by soon, I literally mean right now. In simple terms, a rogue-like game is when you die, there is no progression, essentially meaning you start over from scratch with none of the advantages you've gained being held. But on the other hand, a rogue-lite game is more focused on the permadeath aspect, meaning that although you still start from the beginning, you get to keep some of the abilities and resources you've gained during the run to upgrade and improve your chances of making it to the end. For example, in this game, when Kratos dies, he gets to keep his loot, which can be used to permanently upgrade his stats, making it a rogue-lite game. The game's completion time is relatively short, spanning 6 to 7 hours for a full 100% completion, making it a worthwhile DLC. And here's a shameless plug. If you want to see my no commentary playthrough, then check out the link here and in the description below. As the gameplay is quite repetitive, I think the most effective way to give you a base understanding is to do a walkthrough of what happens in majority of your runs. In a typical gameplay loop, you wake up on the shore as Kratos and you walk towards the gate, with the area acting as almost like a hub world. And in this hub world, you have the opportunity to customize your armors, weapons, skills, and general appearance. Unlike in the base game, this does not change your stats in any way and is purely cosmetic. You also have the chance to pick up labors, which are challenges that give you additional bonuses, for example, killing 10 Draugr or completing 5 Stonlocks. You can go on the Tablet of Influence, which lets you buy resources, but more importantly, you can go to the Tablet of Reflection, which allows you to permanently increase your stats such as health, vitality, and all the other ones you get in God of War, the base game, and Ragnarok. If you're a cop-out like me and you are trying to gather gameplay footage, you can also use it to buy 1 or 2 Resurrection Stones, which every time you enter Valhalla, you will start with these stones. Basically, it's a replacement for Atreus. Once you actually reach the door of Valhalla, you have 3 important decisions to make before you go in. And you have your choice of relic, your choice of shield, and your choice of Spartan Rage. The new advantage here is that the legacy path allows players to use the Blade of Olympus, which is always fun to swing around in combat. It should be noted though, that there's only one thing you can change once you're inside of Valhalla, and that is your relic. And you can do that by opening your chest or getting another relic to substitute it. The shield and rage options are permanent for that run. They are locked in. Now, moving into the actual main gameplay loop. Once you're through the gate, you'll always be met with the same first row, with 2 or 3 easy to kill enemies and a chest containing a weapon part. Basically, whatever weapon you want to focus on, it will give it that stat boost if you're using the spear, the axe, or the blades of chaos. After this, you'll be greeted with a second room, where there are more generic enemies to kill, and there you are met with another 2 chests. This is probably the best time to go over what each of the symbols mean. And to be completely honest, I never bothered to learn these during my gameplay, but you intuitively pick them up and their meanings. But I do want to mention it here as it does add an extra layer of choice when playing, which is always something to smile on. So, the first stone gives you unique combat skills. The second is stats, for example, increases your strength or defense. The third is runic. It obviously allows you to use runic attacks, which is the same as the base game. And the final is the mixed glyph, which is basically a mixture of them all. But back to the game. You'll then go through a skull-shaped door, which acts almost like a mini boss fight. And the enemies here are usually fun, as you even get to face Magni and Modi again. But Kratos makes short work of them as he did before. So, once you've destroyed whatever boss it is you're facing, and trust me, they all start to blend together after a while, you finally get permitted to enter the Greek labyrinth, where you have the Battle of Valhalla's Chosen. There are basically realm tears where you go and fight a mob of enemies, with one usually being much harder than the rest. But it should be noted here that time is of the essence, and the longer you stay hunting for the enemies, the harder the fights become as the enemies level up. And trust me, Helios will be there reminding you at literally every single second.
Did you forget that haste is a factor here? Only getting harder as you delay, Kratos. Only getting harder as you delay, Kratos.
It kind of makes me agree with Kratos ripping his head off. Finally, we reach the end of the loop, and we get to fight Tyr. Not once, not twice, not thrice, but 4 times. Each fight offers a unique experience, as each time he has different weapons, and boy oh boy does he use these weapons. If you've played Ragnarok, then you're familiar with the humanoid bus structure, and they usually give it to you, so it should be nothing out of the ordinary. But out of the 4 bosses I played, I found Tyr version 2 and 3 the hardest. Simply because instead of it being a 1v1 boss, they sneak in mob fights as well, and the enemies can kill Tyr as if the fight wasn't hard enough. You can actually decide to make things harder for yourself by taking on additional risks and restrictions from, I hope I pronounced this right, the Muspelheim Trial Swords, or the Burdens of Valhalla. But they are pretty easy anyway, so I don't really see any of the additional benefit, or any of the additional challenge. In summary, what do I think of the gameplay? The gameplay is something I'm already used to, so I was naturally inclined to enjoy it as I have in the past years. I'd be a liar if I didn't. Despite enjoying the gameplay, however, within the first 6 to 8 hours of runtime that it takes to reach 100% completion, the game and the gameplay itself get repetitive and stale. There is only so much fighting that a man or woman can do without any other stimuli in the game. But taking into consideration that this is a DLC added on top of a full game that already solves all of these issues, I don't really think it's a fair critique to include here. So honestly, as a standalone, I'm going to give the gameplay a thumbs up. While the gameplay is solid, there's always room for improvement. And personal preference aside, I think a few adjustments could enhance the overall experience. Firstly, once you complete the game, I think you should be able to choose which version of Tyr you wish to face, and I don't think you should have to go through the whole gameplay loop to do so. This is something that's always bothered me about RPG games, because especially when you find there's a really good replayable boss, I don't think you should be locked into only being allowed to play them once. And I think at the end of the experience, you should be allowed to choose to just drop into some type of combat arena and fight that boss as many times as you like and perfect your skills, like in the Kingdom Hearts 2.5 style. Speaking of bosses, I think the mini-bosses in the game were also quite lackluster, as they were just reskinned versions of monsters we've already beaten in God of War 2018 or God of War Ragnarok. But on top of that, they were also made to be extremely easy, or maybe my skills have just gone better. I hate to bring Kingdom Hearts again into a God of War review, but I do think they maybe should have taken the data battles idea, where although you're playing with the same mini-bosses, or in Kingdom Hearts' cases, actual bosses, they're a lot more difficult and you need a lot quicker reaction times. As in, for example, I literally beat Magni and Modi in about a minute each. Finally, to keep it interesting, I think you should be able to take on more challenges, for example, things that make the game more difficult or restrictive. Because to be honest, there's madmen or mad women out there that like to do difficult things because they hate themselves. Great example, I know a YouTuber who done Give Me God of War mode and beat every Valkyrie with 0 damage on the base game. Yes, that person is crazy, link in the description below. But back to God of War, and a good example would be having one weapon for the whole gameplay loop, meaning you're locked into either the axe, the spear, or the blades of chaos from the beginning all the way to the end of tier. And that way, it makes the game more replayable for casuals, and it allows YouTubers like me to make more content for people like you to sit back and enjoy. But these are just my thoughts on what I think could be improved. And once you've actually played the DLC, be sure to let me know in the comments what you think can be improved and if you agree with any of my criticisms. Now, there's no review without story review, but I'll keep the description of the actual storyline as brief as I can, as I think it's something you should actually experience for yourself. And even if you don't play the game, I think this is definitely worth watching all the cutscenes at least, or somebody else playing it so you can actually experience the intimate moments. Kratos and Mimir's relationship here really improves, and you can see the distance they've come between Kratos calling him head and him referring to him as his best counsel and brother. I'm also not planning to get into it because of the intricate detail, and I do plan to release a video on what this means for Kratos' journey and if there's anything actually coming next. But to get into it, Kratos received an invitation to Valhalla, and like everything he's done in his life, he tries to use force to go in. And I think this is why I think the first connection to the gameplay is fantastic, because you actively get weaker, you're restrained, you don't get any of your upgrades, and your health rapidly fades almost like you're being poisoned. I think you can actually make it to the end in this state. However, I definitely did not have the skill to do so, and in the end I died, which is what the game actually wants, because once you die, you get the chance to come back and face Valhalla again, hopefully this time better. Here we found out that him and Freya have discussed something previously, and he's clearly not happy with it. But it turns out that Freya wants him to become the god of war of the Norse pantheon, and he's battling himself on if he can ever take on that position again, which is an understandable request. As I said before, this is a love letter to the fans, but I've never said why I think it is a love letter to the fans. It's because the Greek fans get to relive the Greek story in a venue they know and love from the original trilogy by seeing the same Greek enemies and retelling of the same stories in a creative way, and the most important bit is that you're able to use the blade of Olympus to slay your enemies. Who said bettering thyself could not be fun? Traversing your way through Valhalla is a great way to learn more about Kratos, because we hear him discuss with Mimir, flashbacks, and just general reflection. And via these old stories, we get to learn about his previous life, things he never mentions in God of War 2018 or God of War Ragnarok. For example, his wife before Faye, and his other child, Calliope, before Atreus.
The flute you found, you said it belonged to your daughter.
I carved it for her as a gift. She enjoyed playing and was skilled with it. There was a song she would play, one I used to remember every note of, but no longer.
Brother, if you mean to recount the story of the day you were tricked into killing your wife and daughter, you don't have to. You've told that story before. We know how it ends. You needn't relive it.
I'm sure everyone watching this video knows that Kratos was tricked into killing his original wife and child. But what most people may not know is that he was actually given a chance to stay with her in a later side installment of games. However, he decided to leave her once again to save the world. We also get to see Helios become a key part of the story, and most likely because it's one of the most brutal kills in the whole franchise, with Kratos literally ripping his head off of his body and using him as a lamp. The writers showing their excellent skills here once again, because Helios is introduced as a replacement for Mimir once we enter the Greek lands. But in the story, it's explained that it's used to torment Kratos and get him to remember his previous mistakes, while remaining with the idea of using a head as exposition. Once we reach Tyr for the first time, his motive becomes clear. He wants Kratos to take on his old day job of God of War, and more importantly, he and Mimir want Kratos to see what type of man he has become, the improvements he has made, and his undeniable growth in his journey to be better. Kratos defeating Tyr for the fourth and final time has one final obstacle to overcome, and that's his past self, or should I say what he actually thinks of himself. When he actually walks through those doors for the first time, he's stripped of his weapons, his armor, and he's basically laid bare.
What can I say to you?
He doesn't know what to say to himself, and it's one of the most beautiful scenes of the game, as it's the most we hear Kratos talk. For the first time in 2 installments, and almost 5 years in real time, we get to hear every single thought, and it's nice to be on the inside of his head for once, as opposed to making theories on it or trying to decipher his many, many grumbles. Kratos remembers what it's like to originally take up that throne, originally be the god of war, a god of pain, and a god of suffering. He recounts everything he has done and questions if he is even qualified to lead or place himself in service. Here is where the change happens as he stumbles over the words "in service." He realizes that he has changed, and he's changed a great deal because he's not thinking of taking on this throne and the duty for himself. He knows the burden oh so well of being a god of war, of being a god of vengeance, but to be a god in service of others. What more noble cause is there than that? He questions himself again, asking if the events transpired the same as before, if he loses everything and everyone he holds dear. Does he have enough left inside him to make sure he doesn't become his old self and slip back into his old ways? And he gave one of the most honest answers I've ever heard. He does not know. That's a question a lot of people would find difficult to answer, and I personally wouldn't know the answer myself. However, we see his growth here because although he does not know the answer, he does discover that despite everything, he still and always will have hope. He can always hope and aim to be better. Something that can go beyond this video, beyond God of War. Realizing for himself the person he has become, he finally knows that he is qualified to be the new God of War, a God of hope. For me, this is hands down one of the best cutscenes in the entire franchise, as the path Faye, Atreus, Mimir, and anyone else who believed in him has finally come to fruition. The path he had not yet imagined at the end of Ragnarok has come true, and as he sits in the empty throne, he knows well and truly that he has become better. As you could probably see from my most recent uploads, I'm a massive fan of narrative-driven games, and that's really what is all on my channel so far. And I knew this would be a narrative-driven game going in, but it's not something to usually expect with roguelike games, and I think the way they've integrated the story into the gameplay loop is fantastic and done in an interesting way. I've always said that gaming is one of the best mediums because you get to experience the music, the characters, their struggles, the movie-like aspects, and on top of that actually play the game. But that's another video for another day. But each time we die and we are thrusted back into the gameplay loop, we're awarded with the opportunity to learn more about Kratos as we recontextualize his past, thus bettering our relationship with him. Kratos is a very quiet character and usually speaks through his actions and not his words, so it's very rare that we actually get to see who he is and what he's thinking, but more importantly, for him to share it willingly with someone else. And that is what the game is all about, the improvements we make to better oneself. As I said earlier, I genuinely mean it when I say there's no better way I can think of to describe this DLC as a love letter to the fans. It's a combination of new narrative and an old recollection of Kratos' past that new fans and old fans who did not even get to play the original trilogy get to enjoy. It also gives us time to get more intimate with characters we wouldn't have thought about. For example, Sigrun and Mimir's relationship is a side story but a powerful one at that. Like with the gameplay, I do want to go over some of the bad aspects of the story, but honestly, I have nothing bad to say about the story. But I do want to use this as an opportunity to remind you that Sigrun and Mimir's love story is beautiful. And more importantly, to remind you of the fact that a literal talking head has more riz than you. Yes, you watching this video. As we reach the conclusion, the ultimate question surfaces. Is God of War Ragnarok Valhalla worth playing? The resounding answer is a yes from me. The fusion of fan service and narrative importance elevates this DLC to a must-play status. Whether you're a fan of roguelike gameplay or seek a deeper understanding of the God of War franchise and Kratos' character, Valhalla delivers a captivating experience. And the best part is it's free. Currently battling through a cost of living crisis, there is no better joy than a 9 out of 10 DLC that is free. So, God of War Valhalla is an amazing experience and I think it's worth playing. Thank you for joining me on this in-depth exploration of the game, and if you've enjoyed this review, then drop a game suggestion in the comments and I'll be sure to play and review it. A special thanks to those who inspired this content and pushed me to actually make this YouTube channel, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. You can find me on Twitch at EtherShadowman or on Twitter at EtherShadowman, where I interact with all members of the community. And until next time, fellow strugglers, keep gaming.